All right, so we got to dive into this BBC article about Pope Francis.
Yeah, definitely. This is
It's a lot.
it's heavy stuff. Migration, international relations.
It is, and he's really not shying away from these really, really complex issues. So
No, he's not.
I think, let's just get right into it.
Yeah, let's
What
go.
really struck me right off the bat is how he kind of connects these like deep moral convictions that he has to his observations about global politics, and
It's fascinating, right?
it's super fascinating.
It's a perspective I think a lot of people aren't used to hearing.
Right, and it really does kind of set the stage for everything else that he talks about in this
Yeah,
interview. So,
exactly.
for instance, he doesn't mince words at all when he's talking about Trump's immigration policies. He calls the deportation plans that Trump proposed a disgrace,
Yeah,
and and even uses the word wretches to describe undocumented migrants.
yeah, it's strong language.
It's really strong coming from the Pope.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think for me it really highlights this idea that's central to his whole worldview, right? The dignity of every human being.
Right.
That's something that he comes back to again and again.
Yeah, and I think, to kind of build on that,
Mm.
he's not just, offering criticism. He's offering a very different vision for how we can approach these issues.
Oh, absolutely.
He's really advocating for societies that are rooted in inclusivity and peace.
Yeah, and it's consistent with messages that he sent before, like back in 2017 he sent a message to Trump, right, urging for a society without hatred, discrimination, or exclusion. And
Yeah, and who can forget that line about building walls?
right, exactly, that someone who builds walls instead of bridges is not Christian.
Ooh,
It's so powerful because
such powerful imagery.
yeah, it's not just about physical walls, it's about
Yeah.
building connections instead of barriers.
Right.
Metaphorical walls, too.
Yeah, and I can't even imagine what that meeting between them in 2017 was actually like.
Oh, I would have loved to be a fly on the wall.
Right, but anyway, moving on, I thought it was really fascinating that his advice for voters in the 2024 election is to choose the lesser evil.
Yeah. What do you make of that?
I mean, it's
It's a tough one, right? Because on the one hand, it's kind of like, well, what does that even mean?
right.
But I think on the other hand, it's a recognition that sometimes we're forced to make difficult choices in a political system that isn't perfect.
Right.
And that even within those constraints, we should still be trying to choose the option that aligns most closely with our values, even if it's not ideal.
Right, and I think that's something that a lot of people struggle with, so it's definitely food for thought.
Yeah.
So, okay, let's kind of switch gears a little bit and talk about his views on European migration.
Hmm.
He really acknowledges the cruelty that a lot of migrants experience, but he also talks about the right to remain home and the right to emigrate, which
It's a lot to unpack, right?
a lot to
It's like he's hitting on all these different angles.
and it really kind of gets at this idea that it's not just about people fleeing terrible situations.
Right.
It's about their right to seek a better life.
Hmm.
And I think we have to kind of look at all of the factors at play here.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many things going on, right? You have like poverty, conflict, climate change.
The push factors.
Yeah, the push factors, all these forces that are kind of pushing people away from their homelands. And then you
The
have
pull factors.
the pull factors. Yeah, like the promise of economic opportunity,
Right.
a safer environment in another country.
And I think what's really interesting is he seems to suggest that those push and pull factors can be harnessed in a way to kind of create a mutually beneficial solution.
Yeah.
He points out that some Southern European countries are actually facing declining birth rates, and they need an influx of people to sustain their economies.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like,
A really interesting point because it is in a way, because you have people who are seeking a better life and then you have countries that need manpower.
right,
And it seems like if it were well planned, if there were well planned migration policies in place, it could actually benefit both sides.
absolutely.
And I think that's a perspective that often gets lost in these debates about migration.
Right.
People get so caught up in the negative aspects of it
Yeah.
that they forget to look at the potential benefits.
So lastly, I think we need to talk about his comments on the wars in Ukraine and the Middle East. They really left me feeling a bit unsettled.
Yeah.
He seems genuinely bewildered by the state of the world. He says, I don't know why. It's as if there was an international drive towards self-destruction.
It's a chilling thought, isn't it?
It's a chilling thought.
And it kind of makes you wonder, what is driving this?
Right.
Is it just like human nature? Are we doomed to repeat these cycles of violence?
Is it lack of empathy? Is it political maneuvering,
Was it greed? Is it, a lust for power?
right? All of the above.
Yeah, it's a really complex question, and I don't think there are any easy answers,
No.
but I think it's a question that we need to be asking ourselves.
So to kind of sum up everything we've talked about today, we've seen that the Pope views the migrant crisis through this very deeply moral lens.
Yeah.
He's really emphasizing the inherent dignity of every individual, and I think that's so important.
Yeah, and he's not afraid to call out injustice when he sees it.
Right, and he acknowledges the complexities of migration. He's not simplifying it. He's really urging us to look at it from all angles.
Right.
And lastly, he raises this really chilling question about whether there's this, global drive toward self-destruction.
Yeah, and I think that's something that we all need to be thinking about.
Right.
What are we doing individually and collectively to contribute to that or to prevent it?
So this has been a really, really thought-provoking deep dive, I feel like.
Yeah.
It's a lot to process.
A lot to process.
And, I think I want to leave our listeners with this question. What, in your view, fuels this potential drive toward self-destruction that the Pope is talking about?
Yeah.
Let us know what you think in the comments. And until next time.
Keep thinking, keep diving.
See ya.
Bye.